I was 13 years old when I realized my mother was sleeping next to the man who destroyed our family. And I was the only one who knew. My dad had been convicted of manslaughter 5 months earlier. One night at the bar where he worked, he came out of the bathroom covered in blood. A man was dead on the floor. Dad hadn't touched a drop to drink. I was there. I watched his face. That wasn't guilt. That was terror. They put him in handcuffs before the ambulance even arrived. The next time I saw my father, it was through bulletproof glass. But here's the thing that gnawed at me. Dad didn't have a violent bone in his body. He coached my little league team. He cried at dog food commercials. And he swore, every single visit, that he didn't do it. I believed him. What I didn't know yet was just how right I was. My mom didn't waste a single day grieving. Within weeks, she brought home a man named Brandon. Smooth-talking, well-dressed, eyes that smiled but never quite reached. On day one, she announced, "He's your new dad now. The other one's a monster." 5 months later, they were engaged, and she told me I needed to start calling him daddy. That's when my gut screamed at me. Real grief doesn't move that fast. Real love doesn't replace itself overnight. Something was very, very wrong. And then Brandon got comfortable. He started staring at me at dinner. Long, slow stares. Saying things like, "You're growing up so fast. Becoming such a pretty young woman." My mom thought it was sweet. When I told her it made my skin crawl, she called me dramatic. But she must have told him, because that night, while she slept, Brandon came into my room, grabbed my wrist hard enough to leave bruises, and whispered, "You know what happens to naughty girls who snitch." I was 13 years old, and I was completely alone. So I started writing letters to my dad in prison, hidden between textbook pages, mailed from my friend's house. He wrote back through the prison email system, to an account Mom didn't know existed. Those letters were the only thing keeping me sane. But things kept getting worse at home. Mom changed my last name on my school records to Brandon's. Without telling me. "You'll thank me when you're older," she said. That same night, Brandon sat on my bed, put his hand on my thigh, and told me I should be grateful to have a father figure who cared. I locked myself in the bathroom and didn't come out until he left. The letter I wrote Dad that night was the most honest thing I'd ever written. The letter he sent back. Parts of the paper were warped and see-through. He'd been crying while he wrote it. Dad's birthday was coming up. I begged Mom, "Just a few minutes, just today, please, to let me visit him." She said no. Worse than no. That same weekend, Brandon had car show tickets. He specifically requested adjoining hotel rooms. When I said I'd rather see my father, Brandon backhanded me across the face, right in front of my mother. She said nothing. I was forced to go. And that night at the hotel, while I was sleeping, Brandon snuck in. He was drunk. And this time, he didn't stop at a threat. I don't need to say more than that. I traveled home broken. And the week we got back, Mom found my hidden letters from Dad and burned them in the backyard. As punishment, she took my bedroom door off its hinges. For monitoring, Brandon started standing in the doorway at night, watching me sleep. I snuck into the school library after hours and sent Dad an hour-long email that barely made sense. I just rambled. I didn't even know what I wanted. 2 weeks later, Dad replied. It was long and careful and kind. But buried inside, one line stood out like a flare. "Did you check where I said?" Check where? I went back through every email he'd ever sent me. And there it was. An older message, one I'd been too heartbroken to fully read. He told me to go to the attic, behind the radiator. I waited until Mom and Brandon's date night. My hands were shaking so bad. I could barely hold the flashlight. But behind the radiator, wrapped in plastic, I found it. A journal. In Dad's handwriting. I opened to the marked page. It was dated weeks before his arrest. It's been a few weeks since I caught Lauren and Brandon sneaking off together. I don't know how to confront her. My blood went cold. Then I heard a car pulling into the driveway. They were home early. I barely had time to shove the journal under my shirt before Brandon's head appeared through the attic opening, his dark eyes locking onto mine in the dim light. That moment lasted a lifetime. Brandon took the journal, convinced Mom I'd forged it, that it was some sick fantasy to break them up. Mom believed him. She always believed him. They started talking about sending me to a boarding school in the mountains. No phones. No outside contact, for 6 months. I knew exactly what that meant. Brandon was going to make me disappear. But I had one last move. I called Uncle Henry, Dad's best friend since high school. A man who smelled like sawdust and always had butterscotch candies in his pocket. Mom had banned him from our lives after Dad's arrest. She said he was a bad influence. He answered on the 3rd ring. I talked so fast, the words tripped over each other. He told me to breathe. Then he said, "Meet me at the library tomorrow. I'll take care of the rest." Over the next 2 weeks, Uncle Henry tracked down witnesses. Edward, the security guard who'd been too scared to speak up. He remembered Brandon entering that bathroom 30 seconds before Dad. He'd told the police he was home all evening, watching TV. He was lying. Then Henry found Brian, the bar manager. Brian mentioned something that made everything click into place. They'd upgraded their security system a month before the murder. The police only took the main camera footage. But there was a backup system. One that recorded the hallway to the bathrooms. Brian still had the files on an old hard drive, gathering dust behind liquor invoices. We watched the footage at his kitchen table. The timestamp was clear as daylight. Brandon enters the bathroom at 9:47 p.m. Dad enters at 9:52. Brandon exits at 9:51, smoothing down his shirt, checking his watch. Dad exits at 9:53, covered in blood, screaming for help. For minutes. Brandon had 4 minutes, alone in that bathroom. More than enough time to frame an innocent man. Uncle Henry made copies of everything. But then Brandon found my phone, guessed the password to my cloud account, and deleted every photo of the journal. Monday morning, boarding school. I was running out of time. Saturday, while Mom was at the grocery store, I slipped out, borrowed Ashley's phone, pressed record, and walked back into the house. Brandon was waiting. He grabbed me by the hair and threw me against the wall. A picture frame fell. And then, as if the mask had finally rotted through, he started talking. He told me the dead man in that bathroom was in the wrong place, at the wrong time, that he'd gone in to plant a knife with Dad's fingerprints on it, taken from our kitchen. But the man saw him, got too close, started asking questions. So Brandon killed him, right there. And when Dad walked in minutes later to help, the blood was everywhere. Dad's prints got on everything. Brandon laughed, telling me this. Proud of it. He told me that after Dad was gone, marrying Mom was just smart business. She had good life insurance. And if something happened to her, a car accident, a fall, too many pills, well, accidents happen, all the time. That's when Mom walked in. She'd forgotten her wallet. She heard every word. Brandon tried to talk his way out of it. She grabbed a kitchen knife from the block and told him to leave, or she'd call the police. He laughed, said she wouldn't dare. Her hand didn't shake. He left. That night, the detectives came. They watched the bar footage. They listened to the recording from Ashley's phone. They took Dad's journal as evidence. One detective said quietly, "We'd had doubts about this case from the start. The forensics never quite added up." Brandon disappeared that night. But by noon the next day, they had him in custody. And in the trunk of his car, locked in a box like a trophy, was the real murder weapon. The knife still had traces of the victim's blood in the handle. Dad was released 8 months after they took him away. When those prison gates opened and he walked out, he looked smaller than I remembered. Older. His hair more gray than brown. But when his eyes found mine, across that parking lot, I ran. He held me and cried into my hair, and whispered that he'd never stopped believing I'd find the truth. Brandon was convicted on all counts. Life without parole. He died in prison 2 years later. Heart attack. I closed the letter and went back to my homework. He'd been dead to me long before that. I'm in college now, studying criminal justice. Someday I want to be a lawyer. The kind who fights for families, torn apart by lies. The night before I left for school, Dad and I sat on the porch swing, watching fireflies. He said he was proud of me. I told him he was the best dad anyone could ask for. We sat in silence after that. We didn't need more words. We'd survived the worst thing imaginable. And we came out the other side. Sometimes that's all you can do. Fight for the truth. And hope that someone finally listens. In our case, they did.